3. All the little ghosts and goblins have stopped swinging by the House of Wargaming. The wife and the kids are dead tired. I'm a little tired myself from hiking around for 2 miles to get about $10 worth of candy for my daughter. But that's okay. That's how we do it. It's a community event where we get together, we dress up in silly costumes, we make fun of monsters, including the real world monster that's at the top of the heap. The devil himself does not frighten or intimidate us, and tomorrow will be a very special day. The next 2 days are All Saints Day and All Souls Day. We are in that time of year where the walls between our world and the next are thin, and so we take advantage of that by sending a clear-cut message to the devil. Here in America, what we do is we get together and we agree, hey, I'm going to give strangers, kids, candy. They're going to dress up and we're going to be generous. It's a big community event and everybody gets together and has a great time. And that's what we did tonight. It was a lot of fun. But that's all over and done with. So since it is Halloween, we have an opportunity to get back. And now that things should be settling down, this last week was crazy with the rock concerts, the costumes, all that stuff. Things are slowing down, so we can play a little bit more of the solo AD&D. I don't know where this guy came from. I painted him a long time ago. One of the very first wet brushing figures I ever painted. Let me get this out of the way now. This was just a little bit of what do you call it? Production value for you guys. Something fun to look at. Like I said, wet brushing, black to blue, black to white, blue in between. All that wet blending is you while the paint's still wet, you kind of mush it together. That's it. Very simple. And of course, because it's a 3D miniature, you can take advantage of a little bit of dry brushing to get these souls here. Spooky. Happy Halloween to you and yours. We have to do a little bit of stuff. Now, we're not going to do any delves today. I don't think we're going to do a proper adventure, but we have a lot to get through. So let's just dive right into it, shall we? We got our Armchair Dragoons. They had a successful convention this past week, which is fantastic. Absent-Minded is in the house. Dart Mart, sound off like you got a pair in the chats, guys. And we'll talk about what we're doing, what's coming up, and how to get through this week so we can actually do a proper delve. One of the things I want to start with is show you guys how I organize. We're going to start with the advice here in this episode. So for future reference, those of you watching this in the far distant future who want to know how you can organize a single binder for your solo AD&D adventure needs, let me just show you how I've done it. The short answer is, how do I do it? Well, not great, to be honest with you, because I keep my calendar here in the front pocket. Dice Tales, happy to see you. California Dreams at midnight. I lost October. I don't know where my October page is. It's somewhere around here. Bradford Walker. Hi, Brad. Make sure you go check out his blog. So I lost October, but I have November, and that's tomorrow. We are going to do a little bit of logistics for our campaign. We're going to advance the clock. We'll take it over one more day, talk about what's going to happen. And as you can see, I start with the calendar. This is very important. My home base, my regional hex is page 1. My calendar is right here. I've got, now because I'm running multiple adventuring parties, I have September, which is only like a week or two. I keep those guys in the back. And who's most likely to come up next? It's going to be the dwarfs. We got yeah, it's upkeep time, Bradford. So dwarfs, and then the next thing that we got to deal with is our 2 surviving magic users, Ronnie Dio and Dinky Rizzo. And then, of course, for those of you that don't know, we do have a what do you call it, guys? A ranger. This is our solo ranger, Aragoon, who is in training. And we'll get to that here in a little bit. And then a couple of guys in the back there. So let's take a look. And as always, we've got a simple 3-ring binder with a number of tabs. And it's a work in progress. As things crop up, I change how I'm doing it. Houston is way south continental United States. It's only 43 degrees. I understand a lot of the mainland United States had to put on their moon boots and their cold jackets to go trick-or-treating. Out here, we were sweating away because it was a balmy 70 degrees at 7 o'clock at night. You got to love it. 75, actually. All right, so just generally speaking, maps are the first section because maps are what we love. That's what we check first. And then I have my timeline, so I have to go back and fill in just kind of the last week. Kind of a bullet list, who died, who lived, who did what, who got what. Reminder, just so that I don't have to go back and watch hours worth of videos. The next section is kind of a catch-all for like downtime stuff, I've got a couple of bullet points on what it's like in Harrington. And remember, Harrington is the city that's kind of the nearest civilization to our wilderness. And here are the personalities that we have encountered. What's Harrington like? Right? Just a couple of bullet, and I will add to that. And sooner or later, I may need to come up with a map. I may need to come up with some forces. I may need another section. But for now, this early in the campaign, this is really all we need. We have a wandering party of adventurers we ran into once. This is the other kind of, catch-all that I put in there. The next section is the actual adventures that we've had. So I've got our map of the Ruins Tomb. I don't have a map of Weasel Castle yet, but I do have, and this is one of the things, let me do this right now. I have to add 2 hit points to Baby Weasel 1 and 2 hit points to Baby Weasel 2. So this Baby Weasel is going to take 8 months to be fully grown, and this one will be fully grown in 2 months. If I don't handle this guy, so remember, and I'll just refresh your memory for the campaign, and it's useful to do this once in a while, over in this hex, there is a ruined castle where 4 giant weasels have taken up residence. Mama, Papa, and 2 babies. The 2 babies get older as time goes on. If I can catch Mom and Dad, if I can subdue Baby 1 and Baby 2, I can train them to be my guardian weasels. That's what we want to do. But if I don't get there by the end of the year, I will have to contend with 3 adult weasels who cannot be trained. This baby weasel will be a month older. So we've got a little bit more time if we want to have the 1 baby weasel added to our pet. Base of operations to save us a little bit of hiking. That may be a good, and again, we'll flip back to that page. So going back to our maps, and this is why this system works well for me. Here's Weasel Castle. Nope, that's a Forest Copse. There's nothing there. Is this? Yeah, here's Castle Weasel. So we got the lake right here. We look at the overland map. Here's the lake that separates our home base of Corvusberg from the Deadwood. And this first half of the Deadwood, first hex, I should say, Weasel Castle is about 4 miles from the shore. And of course, it's very close to the crater that we're interested in excavating. It might be easier to build a base camp at the castle, much more defensive, and then send people out on an 8-mile hike, and we can build a little fortress here in the crater at the center of that hex. But again, we'll have to evict the earlier residents. We have a simple ruined tomb that is also in the Deadwood. We've only explored a couple of rooms there. This is our mega dungeon, the one we've explored the most of, the Ligmatic Cloister of the Bofahart. So this blue section here is all of the dungeons that we have faced. I've got our roster for the Landscanorts, and of course, I don't think I've updated this yet. Yeah, Horkler is dead, and I don't think we killed any of his guards, but we did kill. I have to double check and see. Did I reduce the numbers of? So we've got the throne room and the 2 hordes. Those are the 3 special rooms that we run into. We've got 20 patrols, and I guess I'll just put down -3 orcs right here. And as we said, on the dice, Dyson. I just printed this one off. We needed to know what was going on at the surface. So this is Dyson's dodecahedron is use them for some of them, and this one in particular you can use for commercial projects as well, as long as you credit Dyson Logos is his name. That's the other way to look it up, Logos. So maps, history, points of special interest, and then dungeons. And here we are. Pour a 40 out on the curb, fellas. That's a whole lot of 40s. And of course, average is dead. We've lost the entire boring family, I guess. And then here are their oh, I should point out, here are their character sheets. I guess I can point out what they were carrying, they dropped. So if we go take a look at the map, this is the room where we encountered the big pile of orcs. I made a little note there. There's another 265 gold pieces. That's what our near TPK was carrying. They've dropped it here, so that's in the orc horde as well. Now, we already know that there's only 10 gems in that horde, but now there's 10 gems and 265 gold pieces. So we may be able to recoup some of our lost XP, because we lost buku XP in that ugly, ugly combat. And then, of course, you guys remember Winston the doggo. He got eaten by wargs. And that might be a good idea. I should probably record that on these character sheets. I could just say, killed by orcs on the sheet to remind me. And then, of course, the back is all of my blank sheets. So I have some extra hex paper for keeping records, a little bit of graph paper, and this is like 5 squares of the inch. And again, I've got some spare character records, some character sheets here in the back, and this is the attic and the other thing. So that's just how I organize things. Kind of going from big to small, zooming in with each one of these tabs, reference materials more in the back, and maps and stuff in the front. That's how I do it anyway. So I want to put that aside now. And with that done, we can talk about, let me just cross, I actually made, look at this. I have a little list of things to do. The next thing I want to do is pull out my disease checks. I mean, I don't want to do this. We got to do upkeep. And we'll start with Aragoon because he's fairly simple. Aragoon is in the city. We've already paid for, he's only down to 33 loot, but he does have some jewelry that he's wearing. And you'll recall, if you don't recall, we can always go back to our calendar. And here's where things get a little bit complicated. He is not going to be available to adventure until November 8th. And then he still has a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-day hike. He's not available to adventure until the 13th if he goes straight back to Corvusberg. And I think the smart play here is to wait for him at the other party. He doesn't care. These, they do have a pretty good chunk of loot to go adventuring on their own. They may have to summon help from and recruit additional help from Harrison. What do we call it? Steve Harrington. That's a conversation for another day. For today, we have to do something very important. Aragoon, I'm going to roll for him first. Now, as I said, Aragoon, and the reason I'm doing that is that I want to show you something very important. Aragoon is in the city. So if we go to the DMG, and this only takes a couple of minutes. You go right near the front, very easy to find. Gary has outlined, you may roll to check for diseases. Now, we're playing this on Hurt Me Plenty mode. So again, right, it's you may, it's not you must, but here's how you do it. You make 2 rolls. You have a 2% chance of contracting a disease. If you are crowded, if you're in a city, that goes up by 1%. That's where we're at. Now, I don't think filth, is the city filthy? I think Steve Harrington is kind of preppy. I think Harrington is not that bad of a city. So I think we're stuck at 3% for the chances of contracting disease. And again, for the chance of getting a parasitic infection, we're at 3%. He's not filth. I mean, none of this really applies. We're not in cool weather. So we've got 2 chances at 3%. Once for contracting a disease. Of course, with a 50, we won't get it. And once for contracting now, this is where it gets exciting. On a 1, 2, or 3, we've contracted a parasite. 5, 5. Okay, so Aragoon is going to be fine. Now, if we had contracted a disease, bear in mind that would take him out of training for multiple weeks. That would mean he'd have to stop training. Let's go look at the calendar here. So instead of completing his training here, we would check, and let's suppose he got sick for 2 weeks, bing, bing, he would have to start fresh. And I don't think he has the money for that. So this was a high stakes role, man. The fact that we were able to get out without, that we didn't lose all of our progress in that training means that in a week he will be able to train to level 3. For our 2 magic users, they are out in the countryside. They got a lot of fresh air, so much lower chances. I'm just going to roll the 10s place for, well, that's our dwarves. I'm not worried about those guys. Let me bring up our wizards. We've got Ronnie and we've got Dinky. So let's check Ronnie first. On a 0, we roll the next one. So no disease, no parasites. And what about Dinky? No disease and no parasites. I mean, I could roll this too, but I mean, as long as this doesn't come up 0, 0, I don't need to roll that, okay? No diseases, it's just that simple. I think we talked about this last time. I already reduced the amount of loot that these guys have by the 100 gold pieces that I paid their up. I think I need to check that. It doesn't look like I erased the 2. I think I hung on to enough gold so that they could pay. They are first level wizards. It only costs 100 gold. So we are going to do that. We could actually have them parked for another month after this. We're down to 148 and 120 in the loot. But these guys are at 500 and 700 experience points. We want to be careful with those guys. We don't want to lose out on all of the time that we've made. All of the time that we spent getting them all the way boosted up. Now that's it for the disease, and we did the wizards. Now we need to talk about these guys over here. Because I had some conversations with this. Hey, John Heaton, thanks for coming along. Adventuring is a dangerous business, reports Bradford Walker. I am documenting and demonstrating that both show. We've lost about, what are we up to, like 12, 13 PCs so far? John, we're doing a solo AD&D campaign, and we've got dungeons and overland map. And today we're really just kind of talking about, we're just kind of hanging out and doing some upkeep, taking care of a little bit of business so that the next time we get together, we can just, in fact, maybe what we should do is we'll see how far we get. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Well, that's our magic users. Here we go. So Soren, son of... Now we got to talk about a few things here with the dwarves. We got Soren. So first of all, we've got 4 spear dwarfs. These are just your general... And then these guys are actually kind of loaded. They've got 210 gold pieces among them. That's the loot that was assigned to these guys. That ain't bad, man. That's kind of our community chest, I guess. Bifur, Bomba, Bailing, and Boylan. Those are our... Now, if they were human, we would call them normal men. They're dwarves, we're going to call them normal dwarves. Soren, son of Slammer, he is a dwarf, first level fighter. Very simple, 8 hit points. He's got some pretty boss stats here. He's got the 1876 strength. He's got the high constitution. He is a dwarf after all. He's about what you'd expect. Now, this is one of the things I think is really interesting. He's got both a warhammer and a long sword and a light crossbow and a spear. And how does he carry all that? Well, the answer is his encumbrance is at 1,500. So even though he is wearing chainmail and a helmet and a shield and a lug and all this equipment around, his encumbrance is only 873, but he's got a 1,500 coin bonus. By being that strong, he can carry all of these weapons, and that's going to come in really handy because, stick a pin in the dwarves, we want to take a look at a table here, and we want to discuss what happened last time we played. We got to combat, and we got to using and taking a look at this page right here, one of the most maligned, least understood, and least used tables in the player's handbook. This is the armor class adjustment, and we tripped up on this a little bit because you got pluses and minuses that are counterintuitive because you have a little passage in the Dungeon Master's Guide that talks about combat where he says, hey, you got to be careful how you modify things. And, oh man, here we go. Let's see if I can find that paragraph. He offers us a little bit of advice in here somewhere. He says, look, when you provide modifiers, you have to be careful how you do it because you don't want to add modifiers to the die roll, which is very counterintuitive for most Dungeons and Dragons players. Particularly those of us that have spent 20 odd years playing 3rd edition and its following, or even 2nd edition. With its THAC0, they said, look, just roll the dice and then modify the die roll to figure out what armor class you hit. But that doesn't work in this game for a very important reason. If you take a look at the way these progression tables work, let's take just fighters, for example, here. I hope you can see this, right? Now, in 2E parlance, they have a THAC0 of 10. Morning, Reverend Philip Wallace Pugh. With each step up, with each increase in armor class, or I should say decrease from 10 to 9, each step better makes it 5% harder to hit. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. But something unusual happens here at 0. In modern iterations of Dungeons and Dragons, the next step that you would expect would be a 21, but we find a 20. In fact, you find 20 repeats 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Because Gary uses a linear increase until you hit 20, and then he says, no, you know what? You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 free bonuses before you hit that, you have to roll a 21 to hit an armor class of -6. Now, you cannot roll a 21. which means a first level fighter swinging his sword at an opponent with an armor class of -6 cannot hit unless he has some bonus. Suppose he has a strength 2 hit bonus. Well, that works fine with the bonuses, because then that +2 means, oh, well, wait a second. If I need a 20, well, that +2 means there's two ways to look at it. One is if I roll a 19, +2 is 21, I hit. But Gary says don't do that. When you have a +2, what you should really do is change the armor class down by 2 to -4. You still have a 20 to hit. You see that? You need to get to a total bonuses of like -6 before you have any real benefit. The closer, now again, if you're at -2 and you've got that, or -1 and you've got that +2 to hit, okay, now you 19. But this little shelf, this little increase, if we were to, so here's our 2 hit goes up, but it does a little something like take a look at a table like this. And again, it's the negatives where that becomes important, because the negatives are where you have to change the armor class to ensure that the price can't hit. That's not necessarily the case. In the example we gave, if you need to roll, if you're trying to hit an armor class of -4, you need a 20, or that -6, oh, I need a 21, I can't hit. Well, wait a minute, maybe you can. If you're really strong, if you've got a lot of advantages going for you, you're backstabbing the guy, lower his armor class. Don't add to the die roll, right? Or if you're tied up or you're fighting in the dark. Now, the reason I'm going through that is because it helps inform us of how to use the armor class adjustment. These are listed as plus and minuses, and just as, oh, am I breaking up? It'll be great in the replay. I'm sorry, live chat. YouTube at least edits out whenever it starts to break up. The reason I went through that is that these bonuses and penalties mimic a ring of protection. You apply these to the armor class. The armor class, when you see a +1, the armor class is improved by 1, meaning it goes down by 1, meaning a plus makes it harder to hit. This armor class adjustment is the adjustment that you make to the armor class of your target. So and remember, we were still talking about that dwarf with the 1876 strength. We're getting there, be patient. So if we just do a casual perusal of this chart, what you will find is it does some very interesting things. Take a look at a two-handed sword. When you are trying to whack a guy with an armor class of 2, 3, 4, 5, this sword is at +3, which means the armor class goes down. It's hard to effectively hit a person with a two-handed sword. There is a built-in penalty because it is such an unwieldy piece of equipment. Remember that it is one of the most damaging pieces of equipment there is. This two-handed sword does 3 to 18 points of damage when it hits a large creature. That's crazy. It does 1 to 10. None of these get up above a D. Well, let's see. I guess the halberd does, right? But again, if we look at a halberd, let's take a look at what happens based on who we attack. The halberd has it's +1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1. Yeah, see, so it's harder to hit with it. It's an unwieldy weapon. But when you do, go squish now. All right, well, let's take a look at the cleric weapons now, because this is where it gets really interesting. Pikemen, I want to look at a pike, where is it? Let's look at a warhammer, okay? Up here at the top, we've got a hand axe. Where's my hammer? Flail, here we go. Club. Actually, let's look at club. With a club, look what happens when you have a club and you're swinging at a guy with a armor class of 2. It's treated as an armor class of 7. You have a +5 when you're swinging at guys that are in heavy armor. Now, why would that be the case? And the answer is because they can't dodge. Look at this, fist or open hand. It's their armor class gets treated. A guy in a guy in full plate armor who's trying to box with you, you're going to be able to. Now you're only going to be able to do 1 to 2 hit points of damage, right? But there's another little wrinkle in here. Let me finish the thought of this. Morning stars are at +1. Where's another one? So quarterstaff, right? You are going to be whacking guys all day long with a quarterstaff. But when you're not armored, look at that. Suddenly your armor gets better. If I'm unarmored and I'm fighting a guy with a bastard sword or one of these big swords, I can dodge. So interestingly, I think this chart does factor in a little bit of how avoiding blows is easier when you're wearing less armor. It also tends to make it. Let's see what else we got here. So a joe stick. I don't even know what a joe stick is. I probably should know that. Who else is a bow stick? Bardish. Battle axe. So battle axe. Take a look at this, right? Battle axe. For some reason, you've got the AC is adjusted down. So a battle axe, you're going to treat a guy in plate armor as though he's got an armor class of 5. There's one other interesting wrinkle. This is not necessarily, and this is where things get a little bit confusing because we're still using old school terminology as we approach new school play. And to really understand this chart, I really think you need to look at the armor class table, right? Because your armor class, when you're only wielding a shield, you go from people tend to think of a shield as, oh, you get +1 armor. And that's its general effect. But there's a little more to it than that when you are using the 2-hit adjustment. Because what happens is this little +1 in AC is great if you're holding a shield. But it kind of depends on what you're being attacked with, right? Some weapons are going to deal with a shield better than others. Take a look at what happens here when you've got a pick, or particularly like a flail. Where's the footman's flail? You have right. You have this weird bump here. The line I'm pointing to is a footman's flail, where you have the armor class becomes 1 worse. So you're actually targeting an armor class of 11, but with the shield, the armor class goes down to an 8. So you have this weird like 2-step process here, right? And you see that repeat here again. If you have armor class 8, well, what is armor class 8? Like by default, an armor class of 8 is just leather armor. Joe stick is a Japanese staff. Okay. So armor class 8 is just leather armor, and then when you add the shield, it becomes 7. So this is an odd little effect that with armor class of 8, your armor class gets treated as 1 better, so that's 7. But, once we add a shield, it doesn't make any difference again, right? Where else does that happen? Let's see. So with a Guillarm, it doesn't matter. What about with a lance, right? So with a lance, that's this one here. It doesn't make any difference. Where's some more that make a difference? We go from +2 to +1. So a broadsword, when you're trying to avoid getting hit with a broadsword, treat your armor class as 2 better. 8, because I can dodge out of the way. But if I have a shield, my armor class is still, look at that. It's still 8. The shield doesn't help me so much against a broadsword. Whatever benefit I gain from being able to dodge a little better is completely negated by the fact that I'm carrying extra weight around. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. So here's a case, but in the case of a short sword, you get a +2. If you don't have any armor at all, then your armor class is treated as 2 better. It's an 8. But if I don't have a shield, then it's 0, so it's 9. Right? So you're actually more protected with a shield than... wait a minute, did I say that right? Instead of an armor class of 10, get treated as you have an armor class of 8 if you don't have anything. But the shield, you're treated with an armor class of 9. And with leather armor, you're going to have an effective armor class against short swords of 7. And then if you have the shield, you have an effective armor class of 7. So yeah, the shield, I guess, isn't doing you a whole lot of good there, is it? Likewise with the trident. And then the Volg, again, a Volg that's a kind of polearm. Thank you, chat. You're reading that chart wrong, John. Those adjustments are to the attack roll. Reread the combat example in DMG. I hate reading examples. All right, Bradford, we'll go through it again. The broadsword was made for making 72. Somebody's agreeing with me, though. Somebody says this makes sense. The adjustments to this makes sense. The broadsword was made for hacking through heavy armor. Page 71 to 72. All right, we'll read through the example. Example of melee. Player A, aggro, first thing is very surprise, blah, 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 blah. As party B is surprised, party A can hit. Attacks with his axe, meanwhile, blah, blah, blah. Okay, Balto attacks aggro with his staff. He needs a base 18 to hit, and the -7 armor class adjustment makes this a 20. Wait, he needs an 18, but the -7 armor class adjustment makes this a 20. Oh, so why does that make it a 20? If I need an 18 and I've got a -7 for the armor class adjustment, then I need a 25 in order to hit, right? I need this. See, this is where I get a little bit confused. If I needed 18 to hit, but wait, my armor class is at -7, then my armor class goes up by 7. Am I saying that right now? So who is an AC2 with his staff? All right, so we have a staff, and we are attacking an AC of 2. So we come down to, is it staff or is it quarterstaff? Elemental P, Q, elemental P. Is it bow stick or is it just under staff? P, staff, quarterstaff. Okay, so when you attack an armor class of 2, the armor class adjustment is an adjustment to the 2 hit roll, huh? Weapon capable, let's see, italics indicates any weapon strikes at +2 against opponent's back. All right. So you're telling me when I have a quarterstaff and I'm swinging it at a guy in plate armor, armor class of 2, I should treat his armor as -5, which takes us to the attack tables. And that -5 becomes a 20, so I still need a 20. So it gets a little bit wonky here, guys. A 20 is not necessarily an auto hit. Now, I'll accept that -7 means that I have to treat his armor class as -5, and I'm only hitting on 20. But I will not accept that that's an adjustment to the roll itself, because a -7 on the roll itself pushes these into... Well, actually, I'm looking at the wrong one anyway, aren't I? We should be looking at a magic user who is trying to hit armor class of 2, 19. Well, wait a minute. But at -7 to the roll, why is he saying I need an 18 to hit? Is he a 6th level magic user? Let's take a look at that again. Now initiative. So party B gets to go. Balto. Who's Balto? Attacks aggro with his staff. He needs a base 18 to hit. What's Balto's deal? We come down here and it looks like Balto. Party B is composed of Barrel House. Balto is he's a 1st level monk. Okay, so I'm looking at the wrong table there. He's not a magic user. He's a monk. And we use clerics, druids, and monks. So I was looking at the right one the first time. There we go. So Balto is a 1st level monk, and he needs an 18 to hit normally, -5. So, okay. So these are adjustments, straight adjustments that you make to the armor class. So this quarterstaff means treat this as -5. Treat this when you're attacking somebody with a 3 armor class. So I guess that 2 is going to be plate mail with a shield, right? So if you just have plate mail, that quarterstaff is going to be treated as... So, boy, that's pretty good. Balto the dog. it's a whole different Balto. I think they named the movie after the example character in the DMG. All right, so if I have a quarterstaff and I'm trying to smack a guy on the head with it, and he's wearing armor, he's wearing plate, then his effective armor class is -3. If he picks up a shield, then his effective armor class is -5. Oh, wait a minute. So 3 minus 5. No, it's -2. So if he's just got the armor, it's -2. But there is a 1, 2, 3 step different once he picks up the shield. So it is not linear. On the other hand, if I'm trying to smack a guy who is wearing no armor, this guy, so I add this to the armor class then, right? You're telling me I add this to the roll means reduce the armor class? So each of these is treated as 1 lower. What does that mean for the shield then? It means if you have a fist and you're trying to punch a guy in the face with it, you are at +4 to the die roll, which means -4 to the AC. If he's got no armor, you're attacking AC 6. But if he's carrying a shield, it's AC 9. Well, that actually makes perfect sense. All right, I like that way better. If he's wearing leather armor, now a body shot's not going to do any good. Headshot's all I got. So I am going to be, normally it would be at 8. I'm going to be looking for trying to hit armor class of 6. If I add in a shield, now I'm hitting an armor class of 7. So just adding that shield does give him quite a big boost. Instead of 6, no adjustment, no adjustment. And now once we get into like chainmail, if he's just got chainmail on, now I'm really in trouble because the -1 to my 2 hit pushes the armor class from 5 to 4. And if he picks up a shield, it goes from 4. So just by picking up a shield, instead of 5, it becomes 0. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. I like that. Okay, so that's how we're going to roll with it. These are the actual adjustments to the armor class. We're going to keep that as is, that the guy is trying to hit. And we can do that. I think one thing I will say, I think it was a mistake to give my orcs multiple different weapons. When you've got, I got 9, oh boy, here goes the birds. When I've got 9 different PCs with effectively 7 different weapons, and I'm trying to track all that, and then I've got 3 different groups of orcs who all have different sword or pole arms, that might be a little bit too much to track, but it is what it is. We already declared it as is, so we're going to run with it. But I think one thing that we may have to do a little bit different moving forward is there was something I did wrong, aside from the armor class adjustments that I didn't do. And listen, I'm not too worried about it, okay? Because I really think that this is an effective example of me playing the game, trying it out, trying to make it work. I don't think look, honestly, by flipping those around, by giving bonuses instead of negatives, let's be honest. The conclusion was foregone. I had 9 hit dice worth of heroes going up against 30 hit dice of orcs. By not killing Horkler in the first round or 2, it was going to be a TPK. I'm not too worried about messing it up. The end result of that fight is about the same. The wizards run off, and everybody else dies. So I'm fine with that. But the thing that I wanted to impress upon you is that you sit down and you run through the rules, and it doesn't really work, and you're not too sure. So then you go back and you study the rules a little bit more. This is a big part of solo play, is really getting into the blood and guts and the meat and potatoes of this rule set. And if you don't get it right at the table the first time, you just step back and you read a little more. And then you come back and you do it again, and things will click. And you're going to see this again when we do the unarmed combat. We're going to get there. You're going to see this again when we do mass battles. We're going to get there if the dice would cooperate. We've only got 1 good haul and like 8 delves. We're not very good at this game. And the dice aren't cooperating, which a good tool, a good hero never blames his dice. Well, all right, you got me. You got me dead to rights on that one, chat. But the larger point is, yeah, it's difficult. If this was easy, it would be a hobby for everyone. It's not easy. It's not a hobby for everyone. But it's a hobby for you. You guys are smart enough. You can figure this out. Bradford Walker says, the other thing to keep in mind is that chart is for the armor type of armor worn, not the number. The book confuses the issue by using the same term for both. Yeah, and that's what I was getting at with the shield, right? Like, it's not necessarily the overall AC of the target. It's the type of armor that's worn. If I had been there as the editor for Gary, then I wouldn't have used the numbers at the top of this chart. I would have explicitly said, I would have said, look, this armor class is plate plus shield. This armor class is plate only, chain plus shield, chain only, splint plus shield, right? Leather plus shield, leather only, shield only, right? Spell that out for us so that we don't get confused by the fact that a guy in chainmail with high dex has an armor class of 2. You're not looking at the 2. You're looking at the actual armor itself. You should read that chart as armor type adjustment. That's a fair way to put it, Bradford. You're not adjusting the armor class. You're kind of adjusting the armor type, I guess. But I'm really interested to see how this kind of works out in play if we ever get there. And that will happen when our dwarfs go a wandering. So let's take a look at that real quick. I'm still waiting. Not Dundermoose. Dundermoose has a great channel. Look up Dundermoose. It's like Dunder Mifflin, but instead of Mifflin, it's Moose. He does a lot of really interesting interviews. He's a good guy. He's if he's not full blown bro SR at this point, he's bro SR adjacent. Very insightful stuff. Just warm, friendly, engaging. You know, all the things that are rarities in this hobby, full of lunatics like myself. So let's take a look at our dwarfs. Our dwarfs live up in a fortress over here, and this is the last thing I need to mention when it comes to our dwarves. There's something weird going on here, because there's oh, you know, I didn't even get there. We talked about Soren, son of Slammer, but we didn't talk about Groin, son of Loin. He is an NPC because he's a cleric. I think we mentioned that last time. And for this little bit of discussion, we need to go to the player's handbook, where things get really kind of wrinkled. They make my brain wrinkle, as they say. Here is the chart for who can be what, and yeah, it's coming, guys. I'm gonna find it. Here we go. Right, and when we have a dwarf, the cleric, that 8. Well, it's in parentheses. So, well, first of all, dwarves can't be druids. Oh, wait a minute. Why is that? Well, I don't care, to be honest with you. That's the rule. That's the way I play the game. Like, we can invent in-game justifications for it, but what we don't do is go, well, I'm just going to rule 0 and play a different game where dwarves make sense. I don't know. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take a look at here, and I'm going to say, what it says here, notes regarding numbers in parentheses indicate this class exists only as non-player characters. Quiet, you. Oh, wait. You can only have up to an 8th level cleric that is a dwarf if he's an NPC. Okay, well, that's easy enough. I said, okay, look, what I've got here is Groin, son of Loin, is going to be a henchman, and we'll make him a henchman of the guy with the highest charisma. That's going to be Gimme, son of Glowin, who is a, what is he? Well, he's an illusionist 1, thief 1. All right, well, so we've got 3 PCs and 5 NPCs. Okay, that's fine. But wait a minute. What does this talk about? Illusionist 1, thief 1. Let's take a look back at the chart. Dwarves can't be illusionists. Well, hey, Mr. Wargaming, where do you get off, I hear you saying, running a dwarf illusionist when dwarfs can't be illusionists? And the answer is buried back here. And to be honest with you, again, hat tip to Macho Mandolf. You got to remember that these guys all started off as NPCs. And then we did the one weird trick where you said, you know what, we're just going to make these NPCs PCs. We've got henchmen. They're graduating to full-blown PCs. And I'm kind of thinking this is a bad idea, because you run with the illusionist. Well, where does a dwarven illusionist come from? And the answer to that comes in this little section right here. Castle subtable. Wait, where is it? I'm going to have to read this whole 3 pages to find the reference. When you have I think it's up here actually. Race and multi-class. General notes. Substitute freely. Wait, well, what is that for? That's for magic items. We are at our table, and we roll, an NPC party. Okay. So then we come down here, we roll what our character types are, the number in the party, level of characters. Here we go. Ignore rolls which are contradictory. So like a paladin and an assassin can't be in the same place. Okay. But then there is level of character, other henchman abilities, character spells, magic items. There's a line in here that talks about, you know what else it says? It says each character should be paired with 1 or more henchmen in rotation. Oh, so we should probably actually break up Biffer, Bomba, Bailing, and Boylan and assign one of them to each of these guys. I mean, we could do that. Level of multi-classed individuals. It is strongly suggested these for random encounters. There's the thing. Substitute freely. Here we go. It is suggested non-human characters and henchmen be about 20% of the total. Well, we rolled dwarves, then we made them NPC dwarves. If the profession of the character or henchman is very limited or impossible for the race, use it. Let me say that again. If the profession of the character is very limited or impossible for the race, use it. Or its closest approximation is one of the 2 or 3 class and individual. Oh, so here you have a rule that does give you permission to have dwarf illusionists in your game. I think maybe you could exploit that too much. Again, maybe an issue, but it does mean that for those ankle biters out there that are so desperate to say, even you don't play rules as written, well, we kind of are. The rules don't say you can't promote NPCs. So this may be like a backdoor path for those of you that want to play around with these weird illusionist thieves. And then for the record, man, illusionists are crazy. Have you ever looked at what Hypnotize does? If you have Hypnotize as your chosen weapon, that counts as the suggestion spell. For 1 to 6 creatures, this is basically like Loki. Remember in the first Thor movie where Loki was like crazy good? Like he was like making illusions of a floor where there was a pit and like wiping out whole like huge swaths of guys by tricking them into falling into pits. That's what Hypnotize is for, brother. And then, of course, if you want to, you can have them memorize Wall of Fog, and then you've got your Get Out of Combat Free card. Because suddenly everybody within a cube with 20 feet across is blinded, and you just withdraw. So, you know, he's either got our eject button, or, I mean, D6, it's crazy good, man. That's our third. And then Keeley here, the son of Garrett, he is an assassin. Now, wait a second. Let's check. You got a dwarf assassin, do you, huh? Oh, you think you do? Well, let's just go ahead and do our due diligence. We'll go check out that class table again. Dwarven assassins. Oh, you can have a dwarf assassin. Interesting. You can, and look, you can have a fighter, like straight out of the gate. Fighter, thief, and assassin are like the only one that there's no question of. But here's the thing. Hey, Matt, good morning. Hello, Yorkshire. Yorkshire? Yorkshire? Yorkshire. How do you pronounce that, Matt? Is it Yorkshire or Yorkshire? Because I pronounce it Yorkshire. At least that's the way I hear it from all my Wargaming friends. Okay, so Dwarf Assassin. What does that mean? Well, let's take a look at Assassin, because this is where things get complicated. I have to do... Rochambeau. Shambo. I have to do something that makes me a little uncomfortable. Biscotti. Do not give the raspberries to the other bird, okay? That other bird's owner. I don't like the whole bird pet mom thing. Yorkshire. Yorkshire. All right. Well, I'm gonna just keep saying Yorkshire because I'm from the Midwest where we pronounce those R's and we stick them like almost French back in our throat. Assassin. I mean, I don't even know why I'm going through all this. You guys know the drill. Assassins must be. Where is it? An assassin discovered a guild. Blah blah blah. The assassin must be assassins who do not gain experience points. Assassins are evil in alignment. Okay, so if assassins are evil in alignment, then what I have done is I have said, look, these guys are all lawful evil. Just bang bang bang. Lawful evil, lawful evil, lawful evil. That way we make it simple. We now have one evil party. And what does that mean for our base? Well, I guess the dwarves of that fortress are all evil, despite the fact that you have, find dwarf here. Oh, dwarves are, when you encounter them in the wild, they are lawful good. We thought these guys were lawful good when we bumped into them the first time in the dungeon. But you know, we got along okay. You know, we kind of went our separate ways. But now that we're taking control of them and we find out that there's an assassin in the party, it's got to be an evil party. And to just keep things simple, what this means for our campaign is that we are now running 2 groups of people that are doing 2 very different things. Our Corvusberg crew was headed for, go to the map, the Ligmatic Cloister, and bumped into those guys. And, right, so now you've got evil dwarves up here in a fortress at the end of D's Nuts Pass. And you've got good guys coming up this direction to get to the Ligmatic Cloister, and they're all trying to hit the same area at the same time. So now we have a little bit of friction that we can play with as we play our solo wargaming campaign. But I think the real thing that we have to do, and so that's just kind of where we're at. I'm not going to worry too much about them. But again, what that means is our cleric is an evil cleric, huh? All right. That means this cleric does he still have cure light wounds, or does he have cause light wounds? I don't know. The other nice thing is because he is an NPC, he's going to get half experience points. Oh, and I should point that out as well. I started these guys out with, I basically said, you know what? Because they've done a number of delves, I'm going to give them, well, first of all, I give them the 10% XP boost for those that qualify. Our fighter has a strength of 18. He gets a 10%. That gives him 200. Then I said, well, what's half of the level to get to the second level? And I'm going to give him that much too. So our fighter's at 1200. Our cleric, oh, but he's a henchman, so I kind of cut his. No, that is. I think I cut him a little bit more, and then likewise with our thief, he's at 750. He qualifies. Oh, I think he qualifies that. Oh no, he's the assassin, right? And then this guy likewise, same thing. So you can see they've got a pretty good chunk of experience points right out of the gate. But that's because these guys have been to the cloister a few times. They've been around. And, we're still halfway there, so we're not starting with a second-level character, which I could argue for why that's rules is written. But, I mean, honestly, the guys that are coming at you, that'll come at you for like, oh, you said you play games as written, but now you don't really do that. They don't care. They're just looking to score points. There's no amount of talking that will satisfy those guys. But for those of you that are on the fence, that's why I thought it was worth going through. Just to kind of explain what my thinking is and why I think that we're still on pretty stable ground to make the claim that we believe AD&D is a fun game that can be played as written. That's all I got. It's almost the witching hour here, so I'm going to bail out. Unless you guys have any last questions here in the next 30 seconds, and you can hit enter. I got some birds to put to bed. I got to work tomorrow. Man, all that walking wiped me out too. I picked a good day to skip leg day, I tell you what. And I didn't skip it. I just pushed it for a day. I need to do some shoulder work anyway. Hey guys, thanks for listening to me do my upkeep. Thanks for listening to me ramble about AD&D. It's such a great game. I just love talking about this game. I love learning from you guys. We know better how to use that armor type adjustment chart by giving bonuses and penalties based on the weapons. And when we use our dwarves next time around. Oh, I didn't even finish that thought. I said I was going to circle around to it. This is the true power of the super strong fighter. You get an extra 1,500 coins worth of stuff to carry. A guy with a strength of 12 to 13, he can carry a sword or a blunt weapon. That's it. Whoever he goes up against, he's got to use that weapon. Our dwarf fighter can say, you know what? I'm going to use my, what's his armor class? He can actually say, look, I'm going up against armor class of 5. Well, let's see. I have a spear. And so that spear gives me, he's going to be armor class of, so that's the adjustment to the armor class. It goes to 4 for the spear. Or I could use my longsword, which is armor class of 5. Oh, I don't like that. Or I could use my footman's flail, which armor class of 5 is at +2. Oh, that's actually a 7 versus the armor class goes, wait, I'm at +2 on my roll means my armor class is effectively a 7. Oh, I don't want to use the flail on that. And then I also have the a trident. Okay, so with the trident, I'm at -1. So we can't, maybe that was a bad example, but I mean, you get the idea. We can actually sit and look, and if you're playing AD&D and you're not playing solo, take advantage of your extra encumbrance to pack a full loadout so that you can use the right tool for the job. Do you need a can opener? You got it. Do you need a bludgeon? You got it. More modern iterations of the game scaled that down to piercing, bludgeoning, and slashing. I think that's how GURPS does it, maybe? But we don't need to do that because we have this cool little chart we can use. Thanks again for sticking around, guys. I appreciate it. I'm praying for you. Happy Halloween. Remember to pray for the souls tomorrow, all right?